Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us for this spotlight chat. This is part of the Lighthouse Revolution. My name is Karen Gunton. The Lighthouse Revolution is meant to help you build a lighthouse with your life, something that will actually help you to stand tall and stand out and shine your light, which is what I believe we're all here for. The thing is that these things don't just automatically happen when you go on your life's journey. So the idea of the lighthouse is really to remind us that we need to do the work and we need to build exactly what we need in our life so that we can do what lights us up and share that with the world. So that's what the Lighthouse Revolution is all about. Thank you so much for joining us here. If you're not already a member of the free Lighthouse Revolution community, you can find us on Facebook, #Lighthouse Revolution, and we'll be continuing the conversation over there. Today, we're so lucky to have with us Angela Raspass, who her whole focus is on your next chapter. And I think that so many of us are at that phase in life where we are truly trying to build a life that lights us up. And in doing so, we realize that we're ready for the next step. And I'm really excited to have Angela here with us to share her expertise and tips and strategies with us. I've known Angela online for quite a long time, and we always talk about how we're in a mutual fan appreciation club because we really admire each other a lot, and we're really on the same page, I think, with so many things. So, Angela, thank you so much for joining us today at the Lighthouse Revolution. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about the whole idea of your next chapter and how that came about as the thing that you wanted to focus on in your business?
Absolutely. And firstly, thank you for the invitation. And yes, we are so beautifully in alignment. The whole metaphor of the lighthouse and the shining your light so that others can find you, but also to illuminate your own path for moving forward into your next chapter is just something that I really, really resonate with. So I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective on it.
Thank you.
Your next chapter. Well, the beautiful thing about this is that I reckon we write new chapters at certain points in our life, and it's giving ourselves the permission to recognize that we're ready, that it is time to turn over a new leaf or start a new story or connect inside to what's important to you. What I've found is that a lot of the women who are drawn to the concept, we quite often, our children have, if you've got kids, your children have grown up a little bit, like mine are 12 and 16. They don't tend to want to hang out with mum as much as they used to before. So there's some space that's opening up in my life. When that happens, I start to think and feel and explore more about what's more important to me. The next chapter for me was recognizing that the business that I had built, I've been in business since my son was little. So back in 2003, I launched my first business. And it grew. I launched a marketing agency at my dining room table. And I think a lot of us women do this. If we've had a corporate career, then we take the skills that we had in corporate world and we go, I'll turn that into a business. So I was in marketing and events and promotions. So I started a marketing consultancy. And it grew from the dining room table to the upstairs room with 3 other women who were mums who were working part-time with me, and then I went to serviced offices, and then I bought an office in Chatswood and had full-time staff. So it kept getting bigger, and that's better, isn't it? Bigger has to be better, doesn't it? No. What had happened over the years as I built the business is that I hadn't kept in touch with how I was changing internally, and I'd been through some significant shifts. I share my story very openly on my website. I'd moved through a lot of challenges coming out of addiction and other things that really had put some big potholes in the ground on the path that I was on. But I started to wake up and started to realize that although the business was successful, I wasn't happy. And I was spending all of this time being very strategic. I was a marketing consultant, so a lot of time in the brain, in the head, and I'd lost connection to what was important, what was in my heart. So slowly but surely this recognition or this realization was dawning, and it manifested in things like really high blood pressure, smoking like a chimney, drinking energy drinks like they were going out of fashion, and crying a lot. So something wasn't right. So it took a little while, but I eventually realized that I needed to change. So I actually made the decision to let go of that business and to start a new one which aligned my head and my heart. So I could still use my skills, but I needed to align more with my values. And I see that that seems to happen a lot with women. I don't know if it's a certain age that we get to or just a stage in life where there's that pull towards something more, wanting more fulfillment, wanting our work that we're doing in the world to have to mean more. And, you know, I often, just to finish this part of the story, I had that absolute recognition. My last formal meeting before I made my decision, in Sydney, we have Tangara trains like that you travel on, and they've got these handholds that you hold on to so you don't fall over as you go around the corner. Well, the last business that I was helping create a business-to-business marketing plan was the engineering company that bent those pipes. And like, I understand that bending pipes is pretty important, but I just couldn't care. And that's what it really hit me. Really, this has got to go. I can't deal with bent pipes and that sort of stuff anymore. So that was my saving grace and my moment of recognition. The lighthouse went on and went, what the hell are you doing? So that's change. So that's pretty much the background. And now I've been using my skills, my powers for good rather than evil, and have created this new business, which is to help women recognize that their next chapter is calling them. It starts as a desire, a pull towards something more, and usually starts with dissatisfaction with where you are. So that's the story to date.
Oh, that is a great story. I love that. I love how you can look back, you know, on your path and hone in on some of those, I call them those turning points, you know, those moments. You just have this absolute clarity about what it is you want. And that's actually how the lighthouse came to be for me as well. I have a moment like that as well. So I know that so many of the women listening, and in particular the women that are in the Illuminate group, which is specifically for women in business, to use the lighthouse as a teaching tool to help us to build something that will actually work, you know, for in our lives, to help us to shine our light. And I've noticed that of all of us that are in there, many of us are at a stage where, you know, we're sort of feeling a bit of a call or a pull to either start something new or make some massive changes to our existing business, you know, that would allow us then, like you said, to feel more aligned, you know, head and heart, and feel more aligned with our purpose. Sometimes some of the women, you know, want to start a second business sometimes, or even just start something else on the side, just so they have something else that they can explore and that lights them up. But one thing that I found is the biggest thing that we seem to need to give ourselves in order to do that is permission. It's just permission to maybe shut one thing down and start something new, or drastically change that thing so it fits better. Is that a big theme that you see as well? And what sorts of advice do you have, you know, at that moment where you realize that the only thing really holding you back is yourself and these rules that we have for ourselves?
It's a really good point, and it's something that, yes, I've seen a lot of women battle with as well. So there's a couple of ideas I'd like to share at that point. The first one is the idea of the investor client, or the investor business. So when you're moving, when you're feeling that desire to move from one thing to the other, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, with Ideas into Action, my marketing agency, I let go of probably 90% of the clients. I had 4 staff who were also in marketing, so I could let go and make sure they were being taken care of. But I held on to 3 or 4 times 4 in total clients whose work I enjoyed, and I enjoyed the relationship with them. What that did is I looked upon it as they were investing in me so that I could create what I wanted. So I was still doing some work there that perhaps wasn't in my sweetest spot. It was in my zone of competence, but not my zone of genius. But it was okay. So that they helped me through the transition in terms of they paid the bills whilst I was building what I really wanted to. So quite often that transition period can be less painful if we look at it as an investment rather than resentment. As if they're holding me back from doing the thing I really want to do. Well, no, they're investing in you so that you can. So that's the first part. The second part with the permission. Now, this is really where I think there's part A and part B to this. Giving yourself permission means you need to trust yourself. You need to back yourself. So that's a lot to do with self-belief. So one of the things to look at there is, and we've spoken about this before, is what part of you is telling you that you can't create this? It's usually coming from your inner critic who wants to keep you safe, who doesn't want you to stretch. So you need to look at what she is saying and actually challenge it in a pretty loving way. You don't want to beat her up because she's trying to keep you safe, but to hear the messages that are coming through, they're not actually from you. Use the body barometer. If you feel excited about this new thing, then the chances are it's in alignment with you. So if the inner critic starts talking, you need to just reassure her that you're going to take a few steps in that direction anyway. So those are the two key things there. And the last part is to look at your values. What's important to you? Is your current business in alignment with your values? For example, if you love community, but all of your work is just one-on-one, then that could be the reason you're feeling this pull. It could be because your current business just needs to be tweaked and changed rather than completely exploded and thrown away. So it's a little bit of searching around, are my values, the things that are important to me, the things that light me up, are they reflected in my business? And if not, how could I introduce them? One example, I love being out in nature. Love it. Getting the hell out of the city. I grew up on a farm in New Zealand, so being in the wide open spaces is really important to me. So I've introduced with my own high-level group of clients, we go on retreats. And those retreats are not at 5-star hotels in the city. They're way the hell out of Sydney, somewhere really pretty with very few people around. So that lights me up. That's in alignment with me. So there's a few different roads you might investigate to see which of those ideas are going to help you take the next step. Because it's evolution. It's not revolution. It'll take time to actually evolve and come to fruition.
I love that you mentioned that about evolution, because I think one of the reasons why we kind of hit this phase where we're ready for the next steps, and we sometimes even realize that that's quite a big next chapter. It's quite different even from what we've been doing or where we thought we were even going. And that's because we evolve. I mean, It makes sense when you think of how much we grow as people. And I always say, only crazy people choose to have businesses, because they're really hard work and they push your buttons and there's all these triggers and all this stuff. And the reason that we take that path in our lives, those of us who are crazy enough to do it, is because we're actually here to evolve and grow and learn, and nothing pushes you, further in that direction, I don't think, than being an entrepreneur and starting a business. So it makes sense, that we do grow and evolve so much that we realize, what we thought we were going to do has actually changed quite a lot, or the direction our business took has actually changed quite a lot. And that's because we changed quite a lot.
And it's recognition. I know it's an old cliched expression, but Rome wasn't built in a day. I was just speaking about this with my own group of women this morning on a mastermind call, that we are here to grow. That is the purpose of life, to grow into your purpose. And if I stopped Ideas into Action officially back at the end of 2012. So that was 3 years ago, and I've been revolving and keeping on moving until I've come to this spot today. Or really, it was about 8 months ago when I really found my sweet spot. It was like, I'm here, this is it. I had to change the name from Your Second Act to Your Next Chapter, but that's a whole different story. But I had to try things on for size, and I had to really have very high self-awareness, as in, does this feel good? Does this feel right? Did that work? And to take everything as feedback, to keep course correcting. But if you wait until you've got all your ducks in a row before you move, you'll never move. So you need to just start moving, and then that, once you've got that forward momentum, then you can do some course correcting. But so if you've got a calling, if something is saying, hey, I want you to explore this, I want you to look at this, you need to explore it, because it's just going to get louder and louder and louder, and until it slaps you across the side of the head.
Exactly. Or just some really drastic things happen that really push you. I totally agree with that. You can't ignore that call. That's for sure. So I have a question for you, and I'm not sure how easy this is to answer, but for those of us who do feel like we're either in the midst of this new chapter or even about to embark onto a next chapter, or a second act, if you will, are there, some things that are going to be easier this next chapter because of what where we're at now? And are there some things that are going to probably challenge us in ways that, maybe didn't challenge us in our earlier chapters?
That's an interesting question, because on one hand, we're gaining experience in every single thing that we do, whether, and I like looking at things with the benefit of hindsight. You know, when you look back on something and you can see the lessons that were inherent in it that, you know, turn you into the person that you are today. So from that respect, I believe that it becomes easier because you become less worried about what other people think. It becomes easier. You start to let go of that sort of, and that, I don't know if that's an age or experience thing, but it seems to matter less the further on you go and the more evidence you have of your ability to move and to evolve and to change. So it's much easier because I'm not trapped in the comparison trap anywhere near as much. Or if it comes up, I can let go of it more easily because I have more tools to deal with it because of the passage of time. On the other hand, it can become more difficult because even though I don't compare myself as much to others, I'm still very hard on myself. My expectations of what I can achieve and what my abilities are heightens because I move along. So you've got that yin-yang thing going on. So the challenges that you're going to hit, I guess one of the tools is self-compassion, because by the time we're moving on to our next chapter, and in some cases this can be our 6th, 7th or 8th chapter, it really depends on where you're at, you've got a lot more skills to fall back on. And you can see that the going can get tough, but you have ample evidence, so much evidence of being able to move through challenges. And so that on the other case can make it easier. So it's a real oscillation. You know, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, half a step back. That's natural. So I think one of the things that makes it easier for you is, and this is actually an exercise that happens in a resource called your journey board, which I know that we'll have a chance to talk about. But in there we do a reflection map. And we actually do look back on the periods of your life, right from when you were small, right up till now. And you find both what I call the lighthouses and the rocks. What are the things that have stood out as strengths and great experiences? And what are the things that weren't so good, you know, that you tripped up on? And learning from those, you can see patterns, and it's almost like you're pre-warned as to what is likely to be a challenge going forward or what strengths you can draw on. So that type of thing helps. But letting go of comparison, freaking huge. That makes life a lot easier.
For sure. There's so many. I'm madly writing notes as you're writing because you have so many great little points, and I'm such a firm believer that all these little things, we can actually use them as strategies just as we would any other strategy in our business. You hold them in your toolbox and in your back pocket, and when you find yourself having to deal with things like being hard on yourself, you can as you said, you can recognize it for what it is. Whereas before, we used to let ourselves get trapped in those really stuck places. Now we can say, you know what, I recognize this. And I always say that, part of this journey, for instance, in the Lighthouse Revolution, there is this spiral staircase in the lighthouse, and it's there to remind us that it is a journey, it is an evolution, and that we're actually supposed to take little steps, and get ourselves unstuck and learn and grow. And once you kind of are aware that that's just part of what you're here to do, it makes accepting those stuck places a bit easier. And plus, you can start collecting little strategies in your back pocket for when those things come up. So I love that you've touched on that too.
And your spiral staircase, it's not an escalator or a travelator. Like, you don't just stand there and get taken up. You actually have to put in the effort to climb.
Exactly.
Because when you actually put that, the effort in, I believe you're pulled forward by inspiration. So if you have a vision, which is the top of the lighthouse, then that inspiration pulls you, motivation pushes you. So I'm all into the pull, not the push. But you still have to make the effort. You can't just manifest something because you're thinking about it. You've got to take action or inspired action as well. So just knowing that I'm looking at your lighthouse behind you on the blackboard, knowing that light is burning brightly to guide you forward. You're going to skin your knees less often, because you're looking and you're pulled forward. So, and the light is there, so less skin knees. But you can always stick a Band-Aid on them and keep on moving. We've learned from our scars, and I think our next chapter business is often because we are sharing what we've learned to shorten the journey for others. I really like to think of it, if I may, as a continuum. I often use this like this vision that there's a long line of women. It's not a hierarchy. There's not people above and below us. It's a flat line like this. But there's women ahead of us in the line because they simply started earlier and they've been through the challenges before we've hit them. They turn around and help us. And our job, in turn, is to turn around and help the women that started after us. So it's just that we are going to help shorten the journey, shine the light, show where the pitfalls are so people can avoid them. To me, that's what a next chapter business is really about. It often is leveraging your life experiences. That's the way my business has been built, and that's how I want to pass on the message to other women. And I believe that every business that we have has the capacity to heal in some way. And that's the way that I like to look at it, whether you're healing, you know, a marketing problem or healing someone's emotional pain. It's all about healing and closing gaps and putting those, you know, sometimes open heart surgery and sometimes just Band-Aid, but always healing.
I just had goosebumps, Angela, when you were talking about that idea of, you know, what you said. To me, that's what a next chapter business is. It's about leveraging your life experiences and helping others. And when you said that, my whole body just filled with goosebumps. And I think the reason is because I have this massive sense of relief and also hope and belonging. For one, that I'm not the only one that's, you know, thinking now, after everything I've done and after all, you know, the business I've built and I'm moving on to something else, that's actually a thing that people do. And I'm not like on this little island all by myself. And I hope that anybody listening right now has that same realization, you know, that this is completely normal, and it's so normal and common. You know, Angela, you've created a business around it, that there is something normal and awesome about that, taking that next chapter and creating something new with all of your experiences and all of your strengths and your zone of genius. And I think it's just so cool.
It's delicious. I mean, that feeling. There was a woman that I interviewed in my summit earlier this year, and I loved her description, and I used it before. She uses the body barometer. How does, I've often spoken about the idea that you have. Does it make you feel expansive or does it make you feel contracted? Identifying the difference between fear and excitement. And often the difference is just breathing. So you can be scared of something, but if you actually slow down and actually breathe into it, the fear goes away and you recognize it as excitement. Well, Tammy talked about the body barometer, you know, like feeling into it. And as you just talked about, goosebumps are one of the best examples of the body barometer is working. So when you have that real feeling of, it's like the goosebumping that happens to me a lot now. I used to think it was just change in temperature. Now I recognize it's intuition. But so if you're feeling something, and that idea, if the thought of never pursuing it causes you this feeling of pain, of almost like this dragging in your heart, you can't ignore it. So there are so many tools you can use to help you deal with fear. At the moment, I'm running a group program, and we're all looking at our inner critics and all putting them up in the Facebook group and what they say. And the realization that all the women are having is, oh my God, they all say the same thing. They all say, who do you think you are? Why do you think that's going to work? You're not good enough. You're not ready. You're too fat, too old, they all say the same stuff. And they recycle the same thoughts. They're very unoriginal. They're trying to lead us into submission and staying small. Screw it. Excuse me. Just to give a little personal touch on this, I went to Ayers Rock with my family a couple of weeks ago, and we were in a place called Catajuta, walking through this incredible rock formations that were so old, there's no fossils. They predate life on Earth, like very old. And it was one of those moments that you get, those quantum moments where I went like, my goodness, we are here for an infinitesimal amount of time. Do it. Take the chance. Leap. Follow your dream. What's the worst that can happen? You know, the worst that could happen is that you could get to the other end of your life and go, God damn it, I wish I'd tried that. So I'm a huge believer, and we have such power to choose to write our next chapters, and we should not hold back. We're ripping ourselves off. We're ripping off those women in the line behind us that we can help. And men. Don't forget the men.
Yeah. So that actually leads me, I have another question I wanted to just touch on, and one of the things that comes up every time you say that phrase, your next chapter, which I just love, I think it's so powerful, is it just makes me think that there is an element of personal power, empowerment, and choice in that, because I don't know, if this is a common experience with some of the women in your groups, but, up until now, I've sort of just gone reactionary. This is happening, so I got to figure this out. And if I want to sell this thing, I got to figure out that strategy. And, crap, I better learn about blogging and marketing. And all of my experience up until now has been very much like figure it out as you go. And the teacher in me is fine with that, because I was pretty used to learning what I needed to learn the night before I had to teach it to my students back in the day. So it's been very reactionary. But the thing that comes up for me every time you say that phrase, your next chapter, I keep thinking that, there's something empowering there, because it makes me feel like I can write it. I've got now all of this experience, and I've learned what works and what doesn't work for me. And I've learned so much about, what my strengths are and what my zone of genius is. There's something very powerful about kind of having that open, clean piece of paper in front of me. And I get to write the next chapter now. And it doesn't have to be reactionary and, figuring everything out as I go. I can actually do this in a way that feels quite purposeful and aligned now that I know what I know.
Absolutely. And that key there, that is that personal power. And when we recognize that we've got that power, that changes everything. And this is the case here of putting yourself first equal. A lot of us, women in particular, and I have to speak in a little bit in stereotypes here, just to cover the bases, but we are often so focused on looking after everybody else that our lives or our businesses or the things that bring us joy often play second fiddle. Okay, but phone's ringing, I'll just move that away. But now at this stage, when it's time to write the next chapter, you take on, a main character role. You're first equal in your life. You're not better than or less than, you're now first equal. And that means you're entitled to create it the way that you want to. So the starting point is always following your heart and answering the call, and building the confidence to do that. So those are always the first two steps. But then it's defining your story. So it's looking and seeing, what has my story been today? What challenges have I overcome? What lessons have I learned that I could share with somebody else? And then from there, you want to think of, well, who could I share this with? What is my audience? Where is my community going to come from? If I back then had been, someone had put their hand out to me and said, hey, here's the way through, my God, that would have felt fantastic. Who can I do that for? So that's where, the impetus comes from, to actually begin to write that chapter, to write that next chapter. Then all the business stuff can come in. But you've got to start with those points first. And then, my goodness, there's so many strategies that you can bring in. That's a whole nother story, but we want to try and keep it simple. But the beginning is that, getting the story straight, getting the reflection straight of where you've been and where you want to go, the lessons and what you can share and who, with, and how. And that is all of that power is right there, right in your pen. Comes from your heart, comes from your head. Bring those two together and start writing.
I love that. I know we always say this when we talk with each other, but we always have so many messages that are so aligned. And I've just recently released a workshop called Resonate, which is around, figuring out what your story is, telling your story, finding your story, first of all, by reflection, and then telling it in a way that resonates with people. And so many of those analogies around storytelling are just powerful to me, because I think it gives you the sense that you are writing something and you get to decide where it goes. But I also think there's quite a lot of power in the analogies of hearing the call, and taking that journey, that hero's journey, and only needing to be one step ahead, really, of the people that you want to help as well. That you're actually, a leader. You're not the hero of the story. You're leading people on a journey, and you're taking them to a place where they get to be the hero of their story.
And you just got it there, and you just understood it perfectly, Karen, because people don't want to be preached at from a mountaintop. Like, I want to know down in the trenches with me. So I don't see it as the hero's journey. I see it as the guide. Like, I'm your guide, holding up the passport to follow over here type thing. And that is important for people to understand, because one of the most, the things that trip people up the most is, my story's not worth sharing. What have I got to share? It's that self-doubt. My whole purpose, if I really got down to it, my purpose is to inspire people to own their self-worth. That's it in a nutshell. Because once you own that self-worth, you see the value of your experience. You don't have to go and change the world. You can just change your world. You can just change the world for one person. You don't have to be Gandhi, God bless him. And some of us think that our visions have got to be so big and so important and, compared to, well, let go of the comparison, as we talked about. You have value. Whatever you've experienced and learned from can benefit another person. So just start from there. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just start from where you are and take that first step up the spiral, as you said. And I think your course, I have seen resonate. It looks awesome. It's something that I think everyone needs to take to really be able to express that story. Because when you express your story with great certainty and openness and vulnerability and conviction, then you attract your most aligned clients. That's what I call them, because they hear themselves in your story and they connect with your language and your experience. And that, it's not like work. That old saying, like, you find something you love and you'll never work another day. That's when you get the flow. Yeah, sure, you have to hustle to make things happen sometimes, but the clients who come to you will be so beautifully aligned that it honestly doesn't feel like work. It comes so easily. That's what I want for my community, for my audience. I want them to be in that sweet spot of alignment because they've really owned their worth and owned their story. And that's what I think you do so well.
Oh, thank you. I think that the idea of this next chapter being built upon something that you yourself have learned and that you can help others with your own journey, and that idea, like you said, of sharing that story and how empowering that is. I think that's the reason why it's interesting, because we do that so that we can build the business, but it's the reason why it resonates so deeply. And I know you've found the same thing with your next journey, because it is so personal. And that's the same thing has been with me for the Lighthouse Revolution. It's a story that's built upon my own personal journey, and it's very authentic, and it's very powerful, and it's very vulnerable because it's so close. But that's why stories resonate, and that's why I think this is such a cool way to think about, the business that you're building as something that is personal and vulnerable and based on the ways that you can help somebody else in the world, change the world for one person. It's quite different. It's quite different, isn't it, than sort of the traditional business paradigm, maybe the more masculine way of thinking about a business, which is kind of more starting with a product or service that solves somebody's problem, whereas this is more kind of around our journey and how we've solved our own problems and then the stories that we tell around that and how we help others.
And it's so and thank you for bringing that point up, because it's a good contrast to make. So you can come in from, that's when I was very much a strategic marketer. Where's the hole? Where's the gap? Find the need, design the product and the solution, sell it. Boom. And hey, it works. Let's be honest, that works. But you get to a point where that doesn't feel so fulfilling any longer. And my women in particular, and myself, I'm after fulfillment. I want to feel good. I want to get off a call or back from a retreat or at a live event and just like be punching the air because it feels so damn good. That's what I want. So starting from that, you can only get that, I believe, if you start from the point of what's in alignment with me, what's important to me, what have I got to share, what are my values, boom, boom, boom. And then build your business around that. Because there is plenty of work out there for everyone. There are plenty of clients out there for everyone. But you only want to be attracting the ones that are aligned with you, because then that makes actually serving incredibly easeful and graceful. So, since, and just an experience, I did a rebrand this year just as a part of my journey. And I started being a lot more upfront in the way that I was expressing what I see your next chapter is all about. And the women who are coming to me, it's just seamless because they completely resonate, to use your word, with what it is that I'm sharing and what I believe in. And so we can together, the collaboration doesn't feel like work, it feels like a collaboration. So that's the alternative way of coming in. It sounds softer, it sounds more feminine, that's all true, but it's also heart-based. There's a lot of good in it. And that's what a lot of us want. Now, someone else who isn't in alignment with the way you and I look at the world could listen to this recording and go, woo woo, well, oh crap, right? Let's get down to brass tacks. How do we build a six-figure business in the next 6 weeks? And that's great for someone else. That's not going to resonate with me, and that's fine. That's what I mean. There is so much space in the world for all of us to operate the way we want to operate. I'm not judging that approach, that more masculine approach. It's just a different approach. But this is my approach. And so the people who, because I'm open with it, the people who are attracted to it, I know are going to be a good fit. So that's exactly the same for your listeners, everyone who's watching this. Be you. Be 110% you. I don't want to walk into my business and go, okay, who am I today? Put the business hat on. Right, I've finished. I'm going to put the mum hat on. I want it to be seamless. So what you get, I'm a WYSIWYG business owner. What you see is what you get in all circumstances. And that feels graceful and easy to me, much rather than the old business where I had to put myself in marketing mode before I went into a meeting. Like, blah. Don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. And there's another thing that you touched on there, I think that's interesting, sort of, to be in this next chapter. That sort of idea of competition, and the idea that, you know, someone else is already kind of doing that, and so maybe I shouldn't. It seems a bit like those things aren't as important as they sort of were once, and maybe that's because you realize that in being authentically you and sharing your story and helping people in a way that really lights you up, you don't worry so much because you know that your exact right people are going to come.
Absolutely, and it's an important thing because people do get concerned that, you know, you can get a scarcity mindset, especially when you're first starting off, because it's very unlikely, and I'm sorry to discourage anyone, I don't mean to, but it's very unlikely that you're going to go from 0 to 100K in 6 months. It's unlikely. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely. So we can have some fear around, you know, financial insecurity when we're first starting off. And so we can make ourselves vanilla and try and, you know, just whatever clients come along is great. And sometimes you need to be a little less discerning at the beginning when you're getting started. But the reality is, if you step back and went, what do I need to generate? Just start from that perspective first, revenue-wise. And we can be realistic about that. It's different if you are the sole provider to you know, have a partner who is also contributing. So your situation's different. But if you got real and said, for example, I need to create $5,000 a month. Let's just use that as an example. Okay, and then you reverse engineer yourself from there and say, okay, well, the packages or the programs that I am offering, that means I need 5 clients a month. Okay, and then you come back a bit further and say, okay, so how many conversations do I need to have to be able to invite 5 clients a month to work with me? Probably need to have 15 conversations. Okay, I live in Sydney. My market is women. I don't know how many people there are in Sydney. Let's say 5 million, because I've got no idea. So 2.5 million are women, just roughly. Okay, of them, women in my age group, the sort of psychographic that I want to attract, there's probably about 500,000. I need 15 of them. No problem. Okay, there is room. There is ample room. You really take it back to, you know, the brass tacks like that. You can see that there is ample room. And you can also see when you've purchased or invested in someone yourself, like your clients or my clients, they didn't just wake up and only find us. There was other people in the marketplace, and they looked at other people and they did not resonate with them. They were attracted to the way that you show up in the world. So exactly the same rules apply for our clients. If they show up, you know, in their story, their stance, their style, exactly as they are, then a group of the market's going to go, bingo, you're my people. And the rest of the market's going to go, you're not my flavor. That's fine. We should never try and be all things to all people, because we will end up vanilla. And that happens to be my favorite flavor, strangely enough. But I have no concern that there are, I'm a business coach. I don't see myself as a coach. I see myself as a mentor and a lot of other things, but you'd put me in that category. If you Google business coaches, there's a bajillion of us. There's no one just like me, because no one has a high combination of experiences and perspective, and only me can put myself out like this. So my aligned clients will find me exactly the same with whatever our clients are creating. If they find that courage to be true to themselves when they're writing their next chapter, if they want to write it in friggin', you know, like with textures and fluoro colors versus in pen or pencil, that's fine. Whatever works for you to write that next chapter. As long as you then get visible, your people will find you. So yeah, scarcity, competition, we can let that go. It really isn't important. I truly believe that.
Mm.
I can never answer a question with a short answer, can I?
No, it's fine. Yeah, everything that you're saying is just so in line with the things that we're talking about in the Illuminate program and in the Lighthouse Revolution in general. So I just love being able to chat with someone who's like-minded on that. And I think that it's just an extra reminder that, you know, I suppose that your way of looking at things, my way of looking at things, and the reason why, you know, there are people listening to this today is because there is room for that way of thinking and for that way of building a business. And really that's what it boils down to, is it has to, we've said this word already, but it has to be aligned to you, and it has to fit your life and fit who you are in the world. And again, I think that's the cool idea of the next chapter, because you get to actually create that from scratch, which is really neat. So I just wanted to ask you one final question. For somebody who is maybe been doing one thing for a while and feeling this call to either start something new, or even if it's just something on the side, or maybe even, you know, shutting down a business and starting a new one, someone just sort of on that step where they feel like they're about to take the next step into the next chapter, or maybe you've even started it, but it still feels pretty precarious. What's one thing that you would want them to walk away with, just knowing or remembering?
The body barometer is the number one thing, I believe, because if that idea has been there for a while, if it's been calling you for a while and it isn't going away and you can feel it, you need to give yourself permission to explore it. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, just start with the exploring and start with the baby steps. Okay, as whether it be to start something on the side or the transition. There's no reason why you can't change at all. You just need to explore it. So that's where the resource that I was referring to earlier would be really helpful, which is...
So can you tell us about that again, just in a bit more detail?
Yeah, it's called Your Journey Board, and it was created, it came pouring out of me over about a 3-day period to help people see what their next, or start to define their next chapter. So it's a free resource. It's on the homepage of my website, which is angelaraspass.com, or you can just put in yourjourneyboard.com and you'll find it. But it has 3 modules to it. And the first one is making peace with your past. So it's looking at your past, doing that reflection map and saying, where are the lighthouses, where are the rocks, where are my experiences, where are my strengths, what are the lessons that I've had, to really help you start to see what it is that you could share. And often you'll find that that is in alignment with what's pulling you forward. So it helps you answer that question where, you know, what have I got that I can share? The next module is about getting present and grounded. And that's very much about your values that we were touching on before, how to design, you know, be aware of what your values are and see whether or not they're actually reflected in your business now or in your life now, or what changes do I need to make? Because quite often you can find you don't have to totally reinvent, you can just realign by making some changes. There's also another thing about you know, what I call the park benches of your day, because we're so freaking busy, so we need to pause and get back in touch with what's important to us. So that's about grounding. And the third module is about your vision for the future. So it talks you through how to create a vision and purpose statement that then acts as your lighthouse. It really does. That's the thing that is then what you're creating and what you're wanting to move towards. So it helps you reflect, get grounded, and create the future. So it's done in workbooks and audio recordings from me, but that's the sort of end result. You come out with a lot more clarity on where you want to go and why. And I think that will be a really useful exercise for someone who gets that feeling that they're standing on that edge, they're ready to write the next chapter, but they're a bit worried about making a false start. It's okay, you can tear it up and start again. But that's a very useful resource and experience to take you through so you can get more of that clarity. And I'd love to, anyone that is in your community is a friend of mine, so hopefully that'll be helpful for them as well.
Oh, I'm sure it will, because so many of the things you've said have just fit so perfectly to what we teach and talk about in the Lighthouse Revolution and in the Illuminate program. So I feel like this is just such a perfect fit, and I know it'll just be an extra strategies and tools in the tool belt to help everyone on their journey. Angela, thank you so much. As I said, the big thing for me having this conversation is just this knowing that this phase that we're at is normal, you know, and it's common, and we're not the only ones going through it. And it's just a reminder to me that we can actually seek each other out, you know, and it's so, that support and that community is so important, to just know that you're not alone. And the other thing, of course, is just knowing that you can do it at your pace. You know, you don't have to, as you said, throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, this isn't about, you know, doing a 180 all of a sudden and saying, that's it, I'm done. But it's more just that sort of gentle steps forward, you know, listening to what calls you, listening to that call, and building something around it, and giving yourself some time and some space to explore and to listen to what's happening inside your heart and your intuition. And I just love it. It just feels like a really kind of gentle and beautiful process.
It is. And for someone and that's honoring the change that often happens in yourself as well. I used to be like a bull at a gate. Everything was done at 110 miles an hour. And what I found is I've actually given myself the permission to become a bit calmer, to slow down more, to bring the energy in. So it's not like, wah! It's like focus and in flow. Things happen easier. It's not that I've become older and boring. It's nothing like that at all. It's because I'm more connected, both to, you know, the concept of whether you call it a higher power or source or God or whatever, but that connection, and also that connection to intuition. And that's just been developed. You follow more of that. So yeah, giving yourself permission to not go and think it all has to be solved, it all has to be written, the entire, you know, trilogy has to be written in the next 3 weeks. No, just give yourself some of that space. I think that's a lovely way of summing it up. And thank you. I've really, as always, the conversations we have are always rich and resonant, and I really enjoy them.
Thank you so much, Angela. We'll have the links on the video and the pages for anybody listening along, so that you can visit Angela's website and find her journey board freebie, which is excellent. And I definitely recommend doing that. And we'll also have the link there for the Lighthouse Revolution community for anybody who'd like to pop over and continue the conversation and share. It's a safe place to start sharing your story, and to share who you are, and share what's whispering inside there that might be something worth exploring. So we'll have the links on the video and Hangout pages so that you can find us. And thank you once again for coming along, Angela, and thank you to all of the listeners who joined in today. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you.
Bye.